Kush and Chemtrails, the world's most dangerous podcast.
I did have one thing that's been on my agenda that I never get to.
Ooh.
Because it's hard to transition into just like a random thing, but it's still something of interest to me.
Looks pretty interesting to me too.
Freaking, I can't find the video anymore because a lot of young Pharaoh stuff got taken down when they pretty much attacked him all on social media, took down a lot of his accounts and stuff.
Yeah, that was a setup, bro.
He's back on we covered it, bro, because it happened right after CPAC. Yeah.
That was a super setup. Go ahead.
It's tough, man, because I don't even know what's up with young Pharaoh nowadays, I wish him the best, but he don't even seem the same.
Yeah, you told me that he seems pretty fearful.
Yeah, I wish him well, though, but he had a really good video about this, and I couldn't find the video, which crushed me because he gave a great source of pretty much a group of people who really helped initiate this initial land grab from the black farmers, or the indigenous, or people want to say former slaves, whatever the case may be. But they owned the land and they were farming on their own land.
Okay.
And a lot of this land pretty much was taken from them by paperwork type of stuff. It was said, like, pretty much, I'll pull up one of the articles, but from my understanding, they ended up going into debt somehow, on their own land. So they were then working the land pretty much just to pay off said debt, to pay off whatever taxes that had been imposed on them on their own land. And then by the time they couldn't, then the land would be grabbed from them or taken from them. And this happened like, over years and years, but it was, really bad to the black farmers that, the numbers is crazy. Like pretty much we used to own, or, the indigenous or melanated people used to own pretty much the number that they give us, 13 to 14% that, the country is of black or melanated people.
Right.
That's how much farmland we used to own.
Okay.
Now that shit is down to like a percentage of one, or like, lower than 1%.
Yeah, for sure. I never, that's a good, I never think of, when I think of farmers, I never am like, oh yeah, blacks.
Right.
I never think of a black farmer.
Just like cowboys. We
never. Yeah, fool. I never think of fucking black cowboys either, dude.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah.
So they're trying to like help with some of these things and reverse, some of the things that was done to, people over history. That's why this conversation is even being had, and there's been articles written about this said, thing. But like a lot of people probably just don't even give a fuck anymore. But it's just crazy because it's right there in front of your face how wealth has been redistributed over and over again, and wealth has been taken from, one people to another, just through these treaties and, fake ass laws and, just craziness, bro. But it happened in, South Africa as well. Is this article talking about South Africa?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see it about here in America.
Yeah. It did talk about South
Land
Africa.
grab. Let me do USA. Yeah, because there's similar issues going on in South Africa as well.
How black Americans were African
Yeah, beyond
Americans.
South Carolina, there you go. Because if I would give numbers, I don't want to be giving numbers about South Africa, misrepresenting what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, also there's one like Hilton Head Island. I watched a whole documentary about this one in particular, because how they're able to get the land from the people there is, back then, there wasn't like deeds and stuff, you know what I mean? So the land was put into like trust, and it was scattered amongst a lot of relatives. So it wasn't just owned by one person. A lot of different people would own one plot or one, stake of land, you know what I mean? And what happened is these sneaky people would come in and get somebody out of that, clan of people or family to sign over the rights. And unbeknownst to them, they be like putting all of their people out of somewhere to live. Like they done gave away their land, you know what I mean? So it's not like they just like did it like land grab, like just how we think of like, when they killed all the indigenous people.
Right.
But it's just their tactics are underhanded, time
yeah.
and time again, to where wealth has been taken, And I could read more people, but just check it out for yourselves. If I find some statistics here, I'll bring it up. Just that's interesting, but I don't want to sit here and read this whole article. I did have one earlier that I had queued up.
Yeah, right there. By 1920, there were 925,000 black-owned farms, representing 14% of all farms in the United States.
Right, I was saying earlier, yeah.
1920.
Over the course of the 20th
By
century.
1975, just
There you go.
45,000 black-owned farm remains, and that's in 75. Today, blacks compose less than 2% of the nation's farmers and 1% of its rural landowners.
So when we talk
Wow.
about indigenous or black or whatever the case may be, and
Yeah.
then you see things like this is how the land was taken as
Yeah.
well, not just the massacres, you know what I mean? Like, because
The massacres are almost a cover-up. Like, there were massacres, but to the degree where no one's left, like we've been taught.
because that cues up another thing that I had kind of wanted to talk
Because
about.
then you don't ask questions about, well, what's all this about then?
Because
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy to even think that a that large a group of people would just lay down and let their land be taken.
Right.
Because this is another thing that young Pharaoh put me onto that people don't really talk about. But this is the Gullah Wars, which is when the indigenous or the slaves revolted. And time and time again, like, they were winning. You know what I mean? This was a back and forth war over years, over decades. This wasn't just a situation where people were just getting their ass whooped in the trail of tears and just crying. You know what I mean? Like, this was some shit where the war is still going on, obviously, but it was not just like a one-sided affair where, you know, people were just put in chains and slaved and, you know, taken over and just gave them smallpox and they just died off. Like, no, that's a story. That's a farce. You know what I mean? So, yeah, look into the Gullah Wars, people. It says the Gullah Wars were a series of battles, revolts, and rebellions led by so-called Seminoles.
Isn't that interesting?
The war was the primary event to end chattel slavery. The first black town in North America was called Garcia Rio de Santa Teresa de Mose. The Emancipation Proclamation was a staged event to hide the Gullah's agenda for self-liberation. Wow, that's dope, because you wouldn't usually see that on Google. That's not Google neither. That's Bing.
Nah. But what's interesting is go over here, right? And
Yeah,
the Gullah are
Wikipedia.
African Americans who live in the low country region of the U.S. states of Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, both the coastal plains, excuse me, and the Sea Islands. They developed a Creole language, also called Gullah, and a culture with some African influence.
There's still Gullah people to this day.
Right.
Gullah Geechee. If you ever hear people say, I'm a Geechee.
Right.
That's the Gullahs.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is they refuse to point out that these are not just Gullah, they're Seminoles.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying right here, so-called Seminoles. No, they were Seminoles,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then because look where they're at. I mean, that's Seminole territory. Florida State is the Seminoles.
Right.
They're in Florida.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So connect the dots. You
It's
can do it for
paper
yourself.
genocide,
right.
people. Like,
Exactly.
that's
and
what
they
I'm trying to-
developed a Creole language, also called Gullah, and a culture with some African influence. No, with some native influence. It's not African.
They keep pushing it African.
Right.
Yeah.
They keep saying like, hey, look at Shaka Zulu. He had feathers in his hair. You know, that was over there. But it's like, nah, bro. We're talking about the people over
Right.
here, dude.
And you see the Spanish in there too, because it's like,
For sure.
when I say melanated, I'm not just talking about
Yeah.
what we think of today as black
Melanated.
people. Like, it's like
Yeah.
indigenous people.
Exactly.
You know?
Indigenous who had obviously adopted Spanish and as part of their language or something, because the first black town is called Garcia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose. Hey, what's Mose? Is that Moses? Decide. Mose? Is that Moses? It is? Yeah. So Garcia, the road of Garcia, Santa Teresa of Moses, something like that.
Why are you asking him?
Because he speaks it more fluently than
The
I do.
real history is
He's
way
Mexican.
more
He's
interesting.
Spanish.
Mexican,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know,
Just
that's
trying to
super
use our
racist.
resources, you know. But yeah, the real history is way more interesting than
Right.
the one they've told us. I wish
Right.
we could have just learned the real history from the jump.
Way
Why
more
don't we all
interesting.
just know the real? What, you know, it's whack
Right.
that they fucking.
Because it's way more interesting
Trash.
and way more liberating.
Right.
And they can't have that.
I know.
They can't have that because as you learn this and you start connecting dots and you realize, oh, okay, that's why. Oh, okay, that's why. Right? Like Cookbook brought it up on one of the last pods when he said, oh yeah, how they always say, you know, oh, you got Indian in your family, right? And it got to the point where it was like, maybe we are the motherfucking Indians, right? Because it's like, why does everyone have Indians in their family? And then it's like, well, who else was in their family? There was just one fucking random Indian just floated on through the family and shit.
Right.
And it's like, no, maybe you all just look like the Indians you came from. Possibly. I mean, it's another avenue that has to be at least explored.
Right. We're not saying we know it all, but
I'm not saying it's a fact. I'm just saying it's an avenue that needs to be explored.
The fact that this isn't included in our education
at all
tells you that
never heard of this in my life.
We need to explore more, you know.
Never.
So, yeah, definitely.
Kush and Kim Tribes, the world's most dangerous podcast.